Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Dr. Rico and I serve as the program director for the Master's in Higher Education program at Point Loma Nazarene University. And today I'm really excited to share this model I created called Kingdom-Minded Resilience. And it's a model that I used when I used to work with student leaders to equip them with the ability to apply this to themselves, but then also empower students that they were serving so that they can not only just bounce back and overcome the trauma and the triggers and everything that was really pressing them down during their college experience, but be able to thrive as they became more and more resilient and able to bounce back and overcome those challenges. That's kingdom-minded resilience. And it really is centered around understanding the neurobiology of trauma, but understanding even more so that God is with us, God is in us, and He's created us with the ability to be more and more resilient and overcome anything when He is alongside us. So let's dive in. We're going to focus on the neurobiology of trauma a little bit just to understand how God created our brains and our bodies to be able to thrive and overcome the challenges that we face during our college experience. And then we'll jump into some practical skills that you'll be able to implement today and will be able to equip your students that you're serving today so that you can help them be more resilient and more centered on Him. So let's dive in. The first part I want us to focus on is what I call the 3 N's of the neurobiology of trauma. And it's understanding that we were created with this ability to have neuroplasticity, right? So our brain is changing and it's rewiring itself in response to the stimulus that we experience day in and day out. Right? So just like negative experiences can reshape our brain to function in a different way that can be maybe hurtful or can be in response to that trauma, we have the ability to rewire it, reshape it for a healthier and more resilient capacity. The second one is neurogenesis, right? We're creating new neurons, new connections every day that we go through our life. And so that allows us to, when we are mindful and intentional, to create new pathways, new ways that our body is going to respond to the situations that we experience in a more healthy way. And the last one, and this is one that is key. I used to tell this to every single one of my students, whether I was in a disciplinary setting as a dean of students or when I was doing Title IX investigation and adjudication, that it is normal, right? The experiences and how we respond to those experiences, to the little t, right? Maybe those smaller things like I failed a test, or the shuttle didn't show up on time, or the big T traumas like, hey, I just experienced a loss in my family or something traumatic, right? Those are normal. And again, how we respond to those, the fight, flight, freezing, all those different things, is completely a normal response. But again, God created us with the capacity to have the ability to reshape and rewire the way that we're going to respond to things by giving us neuroplasticity, giving us neurogenesis, and these normal ways to respond so that we can thrive. Now, another piece to understand when we look about the biology of our brain, right? The front part, that prefrontal cortex, is the one that helps us make decisions. It makes us think rationally and be able to say, okay, this is happening. There's this stressor, this challenge, this concern is happening, but how can I solve it, right? And be able to problem solve through it. Now, the other 2 key parts, the amygdala and our hippocampus, is where our memories and our emotions are stored and controlled, right? And that becomes key because when we understand that our brain is impacted by the things around us, then we can understand how we can be more intentional and some skills we can apply. So when we look at the model of the brain as shown here in this picture, this part of our hand here is that prefrontal cortex, where we make that rational decision making, we can problem solve. But this inner part is that limbic region, that hippocampus and the amygdala, right? You remember that's our emotions and that is our memories. So when we experience a challenge or a stress or a trigger in our life, and I say this when but our students as well, right? When we understand that when our students experience this, the students that you're serving, this flips, right? We flip our lid. Maybe you're familiar with that phrase. Well, when we flip our lid, that prefrontal cortex is no longer engaged, which means that they can't make rational problem solve. They can't think critically, right? They're only functioning out of this limbic region, those memories and that emotion. And so if they are functioning out of that way, they make decisions, or they may respond in a way that is not what you would say the right way, right? But it is the right way. It's a normal way, as we talked about earlier, right? It is normal to respond in that way because we are not having that prefrontal cortex engaged. So that's what's happening with a lot of our students. So sometimes I remember working with my RAs, they would show up to a room, they're going to do a normal room check. It's a random Tuesday. They knock on the door, and all of a sudden you have a resident who is screaming at them and just irate. And they're thinking, well, this is not normally how they function. Well, it is normal for the experience that they're going through, right? Having an RA knock at your door, you know you're in trouble. It's all of them. They flip their lid, and now they're functioning out of here, right? Out of that emotional stage. They're not thinking rationally. So who knows? They might just run out of the dorm, and you get all these weird responses like, no, I don't have anything here, even though they have it in their hands, right? They're not thinking rationally. It's working out of that middle zone. So college is tough, right? There are a lot of triggers. So in this moment, I just want to take a second to think about all the different things that may be triggering a student, that may be triggering you even as a student leader. So given in that example I just provided, as an RA, if you are an RA, it can be a very triggering, a very emotional time, the first time, or maybe even every time, that you have to go and enforce a policy and you're walking up to the dorm room. So you're showing up, you have that stress, you don't know how they're going to respond, right? That can be an example. But there's many other things that our students are experiencing. So there is this resilience zone diagram that was provided by the Trauma Resource Institute. And it shows what's happening in the lives of our students as they are experiencing these triggers, these stressful situations, the trauma in their life. Right. So this is our regular resilience zone, right? We can look at this area. And in some people, that can be very wide, right? You might have some students who, or you yourself might be someone who there could be a fire all around you, everything's falling apart, and you're just cruising. You know, we'll figure it out. We'll find a way. There's solutions. God is strong. He is able. And then you have other students where this zone is very, very narrow, and even just breaking a pencil could be what sets them off, and now they're out here bumped out of the resilience zone. They're edgy, they're irritable, maybe anxiety's creeping in, and they respond in those angry outbursts. They're like, whoa, I just asked how your day's going. Or you might have students who are bumped down, right? And they're in this depression, isolation, maybe exhausted or numb. And that's also a normal response, right? They're bumped out of their resilience zone. So, as I said earlier, though, God gave us the ability to grow this resilience, gave us the ability to bounce back when we experience these challenges. And there's a few skills that we can implement for ourselves to help that grow, and for our students that we're serving as well. So there's two different approaches, right? There's the muscle approach that says, hey, I'll learn these skills and I'll just apply them, some deep breathing, some mindfulness, and we'll be able to do it. The problem with that, though, is, as you may very well know, when you're in the thick of it, when you're in the situation that's creating that stressor, it can be very difficult to stop and say, wait, what were those skills? Oh yeah, deep breathe, let me think, or to even try to teach a student that or walk them through that when they're in the middle of it, when they're really stressed out, when they're bummed out. So the kingdom-minded approach says, hey, not only am I going to rely on those things, I mean, that's good and it's going to help me, but I am going to focus on what he has done. I'm going to focus on just trusting him, finding peace, and resting in his love. I mean, it really goes back to thinking about Isaiah 41:10, where it says, do not fear, for I am with you, right? That's what this approach is saying, hey, when I am experiencing these things, when I feel like I'm being bumped out of my resilience zone, I don't have to fear. And it's not because I'm courageous or because I have the abilities or any of that, right? I don't have to fear because the great I am, the creator of the universe, is with me. And not only is he with me, but he's given me the ability to be resilient, to grow this resilience zone and reshape my brain so that I can overcome adversity, and not just overcome it, but thrive in spite of it. So looking at this now, right, that says, hey, I have the ability to bounce back. I have the ability to grow this, and it gives me hope for healing, right? It gives me hope for, if I have those students, right? So going back to that RA example, if you have those students that are always just bumped out and giving you a difficult time, hey, we can actually apply some skills to help them grow that resilience zone so that they can stay in here and they can be able to actually listen, have a conversation, and grow through it. And you yourself as well, you have the ability to grow that so that as you show up and have to do your role or have to do your work, you can do so without being bumped out, without being overwhelmed, without anxiety and stress overcoming you, saying, hey, I know those things are there, but my God is greater, right? So here's the model that I'm looking at now. It's, hey, through Jesus Christ, I will not be dismayed. He is with me. He is going to strengthen me. It's not just the skills that I know and that I can practice, but it is through him that I will be able to have the greatest resilience zone possible so that nothing's going to bump me out. It's going to happen. The challenges aren't going to go away, but I'm going to be able to keep my lid engaged and be able to problem solve and come up with solutions to these challenges. So the 3 domains for resilience growth. This is where we really start focusing on, so what does this look like? How do I apply this in my daily work as a student leader? How do I apply this in my own life personally so that I can be more resilient? The first one is firm foundations, right? It starts with onboarding and orientation. The more prepared that you feel that you are, the more resources that you have, the more that you are going to be able to stay in that resilient zone, the more that you're going to be able to say, hey, I have what it takes, I know what to do, and be able to overcome those challenges. And then the other part is knowing his promises. So just like I said earlier, right, where Isaiah is saying, hey, I don't have to fear because I know that you are with me. I'm not going to be torn down. I'm not going to be brought down because God is stronger than anything. And in him, I find my strength. That's knowing his promises. That's knowing, hey, I have a firm foundation and nothing's going to shake me. The other part is fellowship and service. God did not create us to be alone. Right? He created us in community. Fellowship happens in community. And so having those peer relationships, actually taking time to build relationships with people is actually going to help to grow that resilience zone in them as well. So as you equip them, as you provide those orientations, you provide the guidelines, you provide the resources to them, and you do that in relationship, then when you show up and you have to enforce a policy, or when you have to say no to a club that because it doesn't meet whatever guidelines or requirements, they're going to be able to accept that. They're going to be able to, and might be upset, right? Again, it doesn't take it away, but they're going to stay within their zone and they're going to be okay. Building those community relationships, building those allies, creating those relationships throughout the different dorms, throughout different student body populations, all that is going to help create a more resilient culture and campus as well. But this last one here, boasting in our weaknesses, really where I want to focus on. I'm going to give you 3 different skills that you can start to implement that are going to help you personally grow your resilience zone. And then you can teach these to your students and empower them so that they can also grow their resilience zone. The first one is sensations. So sensations are like this. It's moving away from just how are you feeling to what is your body telling you. Right? What is your body telling you? And I use an acronym called GROW. So it starts with gathering it, right? So that's the G. You gather, what am I actually feeling in my body in this moment? I used to do RA training and would tell them, hey, what do you notice in your body when you're going to have to go have a difficult conversation with someone? And they would tell me, well, my palms get sweaty. I feel like my shoulders are kind of tense. And I say, okay, and what helps to relieve that? Well, if I just take a stretcher, right? Maybe move, stretch out a little bit, take some deep breaths. Okay, awesome. So when we gather it, we're able to, again, remember we were talking about our brain being able to reshape. When we understand, hey, this is how it's normally wired. I start feeling the palms sweaty, I feel tense, and then I get really angst up as I show up. It's not a good way to show up, right? So I gather it, I reframe it, I say, hey, this is not overcoming me. I have the ability to, now I own it, and now I can win over it, right? I have God's strength. I know his promises. I have that firm foundation. I have fellowship. Maybe I bring a friend with me to help me have this difficult conversation. And now I can stretch out and show up, knock on the door, and have a more productive because I've brought my lid back on. I'm able to think strategically. I'm able to rely on the Holy Spirit to give me the words to say and then have a much better conversation. So that's how sensations work. It's understanding when I am experiencing this trigger, when I'm experiencing this trauma or this challenge, what does my body tell me? Maybe it's my stomach hurts. Maybe I can't sleep and feel restless. Maybe, like I said, it's the palm sweat. Maybe I'm pacing. Maybe I keep doing this with my hands. What is it that you experience when you're bumped out of your resilience zone? And when you're able to gather it, you can reframe it, you can own it and find solutions to it because you've come back to here and now you can win over it. So I wanted to encourage you, take a few minutes today and think about that. What does your body tell you when you're bumped out? That'll help you be able to grow your resilience zone and be able to stay your best and your healthiest. The next one is taste and see. And this has to do with resourcing, right? It's looking at the confirmations of his continuous care for you. Out in nature, it could be a photograph. It could be maybe something as simple as just your screensaver, right? For me, I have my cats on there, and that's something that just brings me joy. What's something that reminds you of God's goodness? And this can be a resource that you can bring up. It could be a memory. It could be something tangible. It could be just something that you look out and see that, hey, God is in control. It reminds you of those promises, reinforcing that firm foundation and allowing you to say, okay, even when everything around me is chaos, I have this resource that I can be reminded that God is good, God is in control, and in him, I will be able to overcome. Right? And this resource, like I said, it can be anything that's going to help you come back into your resilience, almost like a reset button when you're being bumped out, right? As soon as you sense that happening, because now you're practicing sensation, then this tool can help you come back in. Some folks even call it like your happy place, right? So maybe you close your eyes and you just think about that happy place. You just feel a lot more relaxed. And so I encourage you, think about what is going to be your resource. What are going to be those cards that you keep in your pocket that you can be reminded of? Like I said, it can be a screensaver. It can be a memory. It can be something you eat. It can be just something that you look at that reminds you again. It's a confirmation that God is with you. You're going to be able to overcome this. And then this last part is rooting, right? This is where you get rooted back in so that nothing's going to be able to tumble you over. These are those mindfulness practices like deep breathing or taking a glass of water or going for a walk. I remember when I was working as a dean of students and I would have to have really difficult conversations with students, sometimes even leading to their dismissal. I would practice rooting. Instead of just saying, hey, come into my office and they sit across from me, I'd say, hey, we're going to go for a walk. Would you like a glass of water? Now they're drinking water. It's resetting their central nervous system. Now we're walking, they're moving, and now we're having a conversation that's going to be a lot more productive. It's also, prayer and meditation, kind of rooting yourself into the scriptures, reminding yourself of his promises, again, developing that firm foundation. It's those mindfulness practices that are going to allow us to be our best self so that we can be focused and, again, bring back that lid and be able to think rationally and overcome the challenges that we experience. And so there's a lot of these, right? The other term that you often hear is grounding exercises, pushing up against a wall, counting back from 10. What are the different things that you notice around the room? All those things help you stay rooted down and focus on, hey, this is happening. This is going on around me. How can I overcome it? How can I bounce back what are going to be the solutions that are within my circle of control? And what are the things that are outside? And that's okay, right? The last thing I want to leave you with are just these 3 things that I would often bring up, both to myself and then also to students that I was working with, just to help them remember that in the midst of these challenges, in the midst of adversity, you can do the best and let God do the rest, right? I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it really does help remind us that we don't have to be perfect, right? His purpose for our life, his purpose for what he is equipping us to do right now while we're in college and getting ready to go out, does not depend on our perfection. The society, this world around us keeps pushing us to be perfect, but the reality is that, again, like in Isaiah 41:10, do not fear, for I. It's not don't fear, be courageous, or hey, I made you courageous. No. It says, hey, don't fear because God is in control, because God is with you, and God is going to give us that strength. In him, we will be perfect, right? And this last piece, and this is a funny one, I always just remind students, like, hey, no matter how many mistakes you make or how bad the mistake may be, at least you didn't lose the Son of God today. I remember back in Luke when Mary and Joseph are walking, they've gone for a few days and they realize, hey, where's Jesus? And then they go back and they're looking for a couple of days and finally they find him. And I'm like, hey, if Mary and Joseph lost the Son of God and they were still used and it was great and God was still able to use his Son here on earth to redeem and bring us salvation, we're going to be okay. At the end of the day, no matter what's happened, at least we haven't lost the Son of God. And hey, just do your best and God is going to do magnificent things with you. And this really helps us grow our resilience zone and understand that even if mine is just this right now, in God, I have unlimited distance between those barriers and I can overcome anything through his strength. And so just do your best. God's got the rest. I want to encourage you, reach out if you have any questions. I'd love to continue the conversation with you. But just as a refresher, right? Gather it. What are you sensing? Have those resources available to help you overcome and grow even when you're in the thick of it. And then stay rooted, right? Incorporate those things into your life that are going to help you stay rooted in him, that are going to help you stay in your best self and bring back that lid so you can make rational decisions, you can problem solve, and can thrive even when facing adversity. All right, God bless you all.